You know, they say life's a roller coaster, but man, I didn't sign up for this one. It all started back when I was 42, met this woman, vibrant, full of life, but with demons of her own. Addiction, it's a beast. We had our share of ups and downs, kind of like a dance, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I remember this one time, early on, we were at this cozy little dive bar, the kind with dim lights and a jukebox stuck in the 80s. She was all smiles, laughter echoing over the clink of glasses. But as the night wore on, her eyes got that glazed look, and I knew we were in for trouble. That was the first time I saw the addiction take hold. It was like watching a storm cloud cover the sun. Cheating, yeah, that happened, stumbled upon her once at a friend's party, upstairs, not alone. Man, that stung. I walked out, heart in my throat, feeling like the world's biggest fool. But when she came after me, all tears and apologies, I caved. Love does that to you, makes you see past the hurt. Getting her into rehab was a journey in itself. Convincing her, dealing with the fallout, it was messy. But when she got out, it was like the woman I met came back to life. We had this beautiful moment on the beach one evening, just after her rehab. She told me, with the sunset painting the sky, that she wanted to start fresh. I believed her, we believed in us. Our wedding, picture perfect, her in white, me in a suit that I swear was trying to choke me. Our families were there, her mom crying, my dad patting me on the back so hard I thought I'd fall over. We danced under the stars, and for that moment, all the past troubles seemed like a distant memory. Everyone kept saying how we were meant to be, a perfect match. I guess we bought into that fairy tale. The honeymoon phase was something else. We did those couple things, you know, brunch on Sundays, movie nights on Fridays. I got used to her being there, her toothbrush next to mine, her perfume lingering in the bathroom. We'd argue over silly things, who left the milk out, why the toilet seat was up, the usual married life quirks. But as the days turned into months, I started noticing the little signs. A missed call here, an unexplained absence there. I brushed it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was off. It's like when you know a storm's coming, you can feel it in the air, but you hope you're wrong. Looking back, I guess our foundation was always a bit shaky. Built on hope and a whole lot of ignoring the obvious. But I loved her, man. I really did, and I thought that would be enough. Turns out, love's not a cure-all. It's more like a band-aid on a bullet wound, helps for a bit, but eventually, you're going to have to deal with the damage. So there we were, setting up our little home, pictures on the wall, plants in the window. But beneath it all, there were cracks, and no amount of plaster could cover them up. I just didn't want to see them, you know? Love makes you optimistic, or maybe just blind. But hey, that's just the start of the story. There's more to it, a lot more. Buckle up, because this ride's just getting started. That first year of tying the knot? Pure bliss, like something out of a cheesy romance flick. We were those lovebirds you'd see in the park, annoyingly cute and all wrapped up in each other. I'd wake up to her singing in the kitchen, off-key but beautiful in a way that only your better half can be. And she'd laugh at my terrible attempts at making breakfast in bed, scrambled eggs that were more like a culinary crime scene. Weekends were our little adventures. We'd hop into the car, no destination in mind, just driving until we found something interesting. Could be a small town fair, a hidden hiking trail, or a beach that wasn't on any map. It was like we were rediscovering the world together. She'd take a million photos, each one with that radiant smile of hers that could light up the darkest of places. Evenings were about Netflix and takeout, arguing over what to watch, ending up watching something either of us really liked. But it didn't matter, because it was about being together. We'd fall asleep on the couch, her head on my chest, the TV still murmuring in the background. Our friends would say we were goals. We'd host these little dinner parties that somehow always turned into impromptu dance-offs. She was a terrible dancer, but man, did she have spirit. Watching her groove with that awkward yet endearing rhythm was one of my favorite sights. But as we cruised into the second year, things started shifting, subtle at first. We'd bicker over small stuff while the dishes were piling up, whose turn it was to take out the trash, the usual cohabitation gripes. At first, it was just the ebb and flow of marriage, like adjusting to a new rhythm. But it felt like we were slowly moving out of sync. Work stress didn't help. I was grinding away at my job, trying to earn a decent living, while she was figuring out her own career path. Our conversation started shifting from dreams and aspirations to bills and responsibilities. The weight of reality was creeping into our little bubble. We stopped going on our random weekend trips. Saturdays became about grocery shopping and catching up on household chores. Sundays were for lounging, but more like coexisting in the same space rather than enjoying each other's company. We were still in love, but it was like we were forgetting how to show it. And then there were the silences. You know, those moments when you realize you're not talking because you're comfortable, but because you're out of things to say. We'd sit at dinner, chatting about mundane stuff, but the laughter and deep conversations of the past were becoming rare gems. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all doom and gloom. We had our moments of spontaneous romance, like when she surprised me with tickets to my favorite band or when I planned a candlelit dinner at home. But these moments were flickers of light in what was slowly becoming a routine existence. As year 2 dawned, I started wondering if this was what married life was supposed to be. Just a cycle of good times and not so good times, a test of patience and love. I guess I was naive, thinking love was all about the highs. I was learning that it also meant navigating the lows, together. So there we were, stepping into another year of our journey, not quite the same starry-eyed couple, but holding on, believing we could find our way back to those carefree days. Little did I know, the real challenges were just around the corner. Year 3, that's when our marriage train hit the wall. She slipped back into her old ways, the bottle becoming her secret companion again. It wasn't just a sip here and there, it was full-blown nights of oblivion. I'd find empty bottles tucked away in the weirdest places, behind the couch, in the laundry basket, even in the trunk of her car. The night she cheated, man, that was a gut punch like no other. I came home late from work, the house was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw them, her and a so-called friend of mine, tangled up on our very own living room couch. The air got sucked right out of my lungs. I remember just standing there, frozen, while my whole world crumbled. Confronting her was a mix of rage, disbelief, and a weird sense of pity. She was remorseful, or at least she seemed to be. Her eyes, once full of life, were now just hollow. She blamed the alcohol, said she didn't remember much. I wanted to scream, to rage, but what was the point? The damage was done. I laid down the law, no more alcohol. It was that or I was out. She agreed, tearfully promised it was her last slip. We even started going to couples therapy, sitting in this sterile room with a guy who nodded a lot and offered cliché advice. But hey, we were trying, right? Things did get better, for a bit. She threw herself into painting, her old passion. The house started filling up with canvases, splashes of color that seemed to scream all the things she couldn't say out loud. We'd spend evenings just talking about her art, and it felt like we were reconnecting. But the underlying issues, they were still there, simmering. Trust, once broken, isn't easily mended. I'd lie awake at night, listening to her breathing, wondering if she was really asleep or just pretending, like me. Work became my escape, I'd stay late, take on extra projects, anything to avoid going home to face the uncertainty. Our social life took a nosedive too. Friends stopped coming around, invitations dried up, it was like we had this big sign on our front door saying, "Dysfunctional couple, approach with caution." I missed the laughter, the carefree banter, but who wants to hang around a sinking ship? And then there were the whispers. You know, people talking behind your back, pitying glances, the whole 9 yards. Walking into a room felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone knew your lines except you. The year trudged on, each day a carbon copy of the last. We were two strangers living under the same roof, going through the motions of a life we once dreamt up. That spark, that crazy, beautiful connection we had, it was fading, and I didn't know how to reignite it. So, there we were, at the end of year 3, standing at a crossroads. One path led to giving up, walking away from the wreckage. The other, a steep, rocky climb towards something that resembled healing. The question was, did we have the strength to take that climb? Or had we already fallen too far? Working in the same office with her, you'd think it'd be a dream, right? Seeing your better half every day, coffee breaks together, but nah, it was more like a nightmare in disguise. Gossip spreads like wildfire in close quarters, and soon enough, whispers about her started doing the rounds. It started off as vague murmurs, nothing concrete. Hushed tones in the break room, abruptly stopping when I walked in. You know the feeling, like you've just missed the punchline of a joke everyone else is in on. Then came the not-so-subtle glances, the pitying looks. It's the stuff paranoia is made of. I confronted her, of course. We'd be in our little home, a place that once felt like a sanctuary, now more like a stage for our nightly arguments. She'd deny everything, her voice rising, eyes welling up with frustration or maybe guilt, hard to tell. I wanted to believe her, God knows I did, but it's tough when your gut and your heart are playing tug of war. One particularly rough evening, it all came to a head. We were sitting at the dinner table, the silence between us louder than any argument. I just blurted it out, asked her point blank if the rumors were true. She slammed her fork down, said I was being paranoid, unreasonable. That was I, when every sign pointed to something being off. The drive to work became my daily dose of dread. Stepping into the office felt like entering a minefield, never knowing when the next rumor would explode. I'd catch snippets of conversations, her name, mixed with laughter or scorn. And each time, it was like a knife twisting in my gut. Then there was this one colleague, let's call him Mark, he'd been a good friend, or so I thought, started acting weird around me, avoiding eye contact, making excuses to leave when I showed up. One day, I cornered him, asked him straight up if he knew anything. He just mumbled some nonsense and hurried off. But the look in his eyes, it said enough. Our home life became a series of cold interactions, like two roommates who couldn't stand each other. We'd sit in front of the TV, not speaking, barely acknowledging one another. Sometimes, I'd catch her staring into space, lost in thought, and I'd wonder where her mind was wandering off to. Sleepless nights became my new norm. I'd lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every rumor, every argument, trying to piece together the puzzle. Was she really cheating, or was I losing my mind? The uncertainty was a constant weight, pressing down on everything. Despite it all, there were these fleeting moments when the woman I fell in love with would reappear. A shared joke, a brief smile, a reminder of what we used to have. It was those moments that kept me hanging on, hoping against hope that we could get back to that place. But as the rumors kept swirling, my doubts grew. It was like living in a fog, every step uncertain, every word second-guessed. I wanted to shake her, to scream for the truth, but what good would that do? If she was lying, would she suddenly confess just because I raised my voice? So, there I was, stuck between wanting to trust the woman I loved and feeling like a fool for even considering it. Rumors and doubts, man, they're a toxic mix. They seep into your bones, poison everything, till you don't know what to believe anymore. That Friday started like any other. I left for work with a peck on her cheek, the usual, have a good day, thrown over my shoulder. But man, I had no idea what was waiting for me at home. It was around noon when my boss told me I could leave early. Take some time, you've been working hard, he said. I remember feeling grateful for the unexpected break, thought maybe I'd surprise her, maybe we could grab lunch or something. Little did I know. Pulling into our driveway, the first thing I noticed was this unfamiliar truck parked there. My heart skipped a beat, maybe it's just a friend, I told myself, trying to push down the rising tide of panic. But deep down, I knew. Walking into the house, it was too quiet, the kind of silence that screams something's wrong. And then I heard it, the sounds, those unmistakable sounds coming from our bedroom. My steps felt like lead, each one heavier than the last. I reached the bedroom door, and there it was, the scene that shattered my world. My wife with our supervisor, in our bed, in the home we built together. I stood there, frozen, as everything inside me crumbled. It's funny how in moments like that, time seems to both stop and race. A million thoughts crashed through my mind. Anger, pain, disbelief. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I couldn't move. I was just broken. Finally, I managed to tear myself away. I stumbled out of the house, got into my car, and just drove. I had no destination, no plan. Streets and buildings blurred past me as I drove aimlessly, trying to outrun the pain. But you can't outrun something that's inside you. I found myself on this old country road, far from the city, far from everything. And that's when it hit me. I just broke down, right there, alone in my car. Tears, man, I hadn't cried like that since I was a kid, but it was like a dam had burst inside me. All the hurt, the betrayal, it just poured out. The rest of the day was a blur. I don't even remember how I got back home. But when I did, they were gone. The house felt so empty, like a shell. I wandered from room to room, trying to make sense of it all. But there was no sense to be made. Just a deep, aching void where my trust and love used to be. I ended up in our living room, surrounded by all these memories, photos of us on the wall, souvenirs from trips we took, gifts we gave each other. It all felt like a lie now. I felt like a fool for believing, for hoping, for loving. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, in the dark, replaying it all over in my head. The signs were there, I guess. Maybe I just chose to ignore them. Or maybe I was too scared to face the truth. But there it was, stark and undeniable. That Friday changed everything. It was the day my marriage, the life I thought I had, all of it just shattered. And I was left to pick up the pieces, not even sure where to start or if it was even worth the effort. Walking back into that house after what I'd seen felt like stepping into a battlefield. Everything was a reminder of the betrayal. The pictures on the walls mocked me, the silence screamed at me. She wasn't there when I first got back. Maybe that was for the best. When she did show up, she tried to act like it was all a big misunderstanding. Can you believe that? As if I hadn't seen what I'd seen with my own eyes. Her words were empty, just noise without meaning. My heart, once full of love for her, was now just a pit of anger and hurt. I couldn't contain it, I was like a storm, raging through the house. I smashed a vase we'd picked out together on one of our trips. I tore down the photos, each one a stab in the heart. The place we'd called home was now just a cage of memories, each one a bitter reminder of what I'd lost. Then came Monday, back at work. Seeing him, the supervisor, sitting there like nothing had happened, it was too much. I saw red. Before I knew it, I was on him, fists flying. I didn't care about the consequences, didn't care about anything. All the pent-up rage, the feeling of being made a fool, it all just exploded. Of course, that was the end of my job. They escorted me out, and I left without a word. It didn't matter. What was a job compared to your whole life falling apart? The drive home was a blur. I was numb, detached from everything and everyone. The following days were a mix of rage and emptiness. I moved like a ghost through the house, through life. Everything I'd built, everything I'd believed in, it felt like a lie. I was a stranger in my own life. She was still there, in the house. We avoided each other, two strangers under the same roof. When we did cross paths, it was like navigating a minefield, each word, each glance loaded with unspoken accusations and pain. I remember one night, sitting in the dark, the silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. I thought about everything we'd been through, all the promises we'd made. And for what? To end up like this, broken, betrayed, alone in the dark. But anger, it's a funny thing. it burns hot and fierce, but it can't last forever. Slowly, it started to fade, leaving behind a deep, aching sadness. I started to see things more clearly, started to accept the reality of what had happened. The reality was, our marriage was over. The trust, once broken, couldn't be mended. The love, once so bright, had faded into nothing. It was time to face that, time to start thinking about what came next. But moving on, it's not like flipping a switch. You don't just wake up one day and everything's fine. It's a process, a slow, painful crawl out of the darkness. And I was just at the beginning. Filing for divorce felt like admitting defeat. It was waving the white flag after years of battling for a marriage that, in the end, couldn't be saved. The paperwork, the legalities, it was all just a formality, a cold, bureaucratic process for something that once held so much warmth and love. But the real kicker? We were still living in the same house, a situation that was nothing short of a daily torture. The place that once echoed with our laughter now resounded with the heavy silence of our broken relationship. I'd see her around, sometimes catching a glimpse of her getting ready for a date, and it felt like being punched in the gut every single time. She wasn't discreet about her new flings. I'd hear her laughing on the phone, or she'd come home late, that look on her face that I used to think was reserved just for me. It was a constant, stinging reminder of how far we'd fallen, of everything that we'd lost. The house, once our sanctuary, had become a prison of memories. Every room, every piece of furniture, held a story, a moment from our past. I'd sit in our living room, staring at the empty chair where she used to curl up with a book, and feel this overwhelming sense of loss. Trying to find a new place was a battle in itself. My finances were a mess after losing the job, and the market wasn't kind. It was this endless loop of viewings and applications, each rejection a small echo of the bigger rejection I was already grappling with. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The divorce proceedings seemed to drag on forever. It was a maze of legal terms, meetings with lawyers, and endless paperwork. Each signature felt like signing off a part of myself, a part of a life that I was still struggling to let go of. I'd come home to an empty house, or worse, to the sounds of her entertaining someone in what used to be our bedroom. The walls of that house felt like they were closing in on me, a constant, suffocating reminder of my failure. It wasn't just the loss of the marriage, but the loss of myself. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. Where there used to be ambition and laughter, there was now just this hollow emptiness. My friends tried to be supportive, but there's only so much they could do. They'd invite me out, try to distract me, but it was like I was there in body but not in spirit. I was living in this fog, going through the motions of life without really living. As the divorce inched closer to being final, I found myself grappling with a mix of emotions. Relief that it was almost over, sadness for what had been lost, and a deep, gnawing fear of what the future held. It was during those long, lonely nights in that house, listening to the silence or the sounds of her life moving on without me, that I realized this was the end of a chapter. A painful, heart-wrenching chapter, but just a chapter nonetheless. There was still the rest of my story to be written, even if I couldn't see how just yet. The day I moved out felt like the end of a long, grueling marathon. The divorce was inked and dried, the last of our shared belongings awkwardly split. Stepping out of that house for the last time, I couldn't help but feel this strange mix of relief and overwhelming sadness. I found a small apartment, nothing fancy, just a place to start over. The walls were bare, the rooms echoed with emptiness, kind of like how I felt inside. Unpacking was a trip down memory lane, each item a reminder of a life that was no longer mine. It was surreal, setting up this new place, a home that was just mine, not ours. The first few nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the events of the past years replaying in my mind. The laughter, the tears, the betrayal, it all seemed like a dream, a bad one that I couldn't wake up from. Becoming a single man again after all those years was a strange transition. There were no more arguments, no more painful silences, but also no more shared smiles, no more quiet moments of intimacy. I found myself missing even the bad parts, simply because they were familiar. I tried to throw myself into work, into rebuilding a life, but it was like learning to walk again. I'd lost not just a wife, but a part of my identity. Who was I if not her husband? It was a question that haunted me. The bitterness was hard to shake off. I became more cynical, more guarded, trusting someone again felt like an impossible task. I'd look at couples and feel this pang of something envy, sadness, maybe a bit of both. Friends and family were supportive, encouraging me to get back out there, but they didn't understand. It wasn't just about finding someone new, it was about healing, about figuring out how to trust and love again after it had all been shattered. In quieter moments, I'd reflect on everything that had happened. Sure, there were signs I should have seen, moments when I should have walked away. But life isn't lived in hindsight, we make the best decisions we can with the information we have at the time. Now, it's about rebuilding, but it's slow going. Some days, I feel like I'm making progress, finding pieces of the old me, the one who believed in love and happiness. Other days, it's like I'm stuck, unable to move forward, caught in the memories of what was. The hardest part is accepting that the reflection in the mirror has changed. I'm not the same man I was when I walked down that aisle. The experiences, the pain, the betrayal, it's all etched into who I am now. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Maybe this new version of me will be wiser, stronger, more resilient. So, here I am, standing at the start of a new chapter in my life. The road ahead is uncertain, maybe a little scary, but it's mine to walk. And who knows, maybe along the way, I'll find pieces of happiness, moments of peace, and perhaps, eventually, a reflection I can recognize and be proud. You know how they say a single moment can change everything? Well, they're right. It was just another Thursday evening, and there I was, flipping through Netflix, trying to decide on a movie. That's when I saw it. My fiancé's phone, buzzing with notifications, too many to count. Curiosity got the better of me. What I found, texts. Not just any texts. The heart-shattering, earth-shaking kind. They were from her colleague, Mark. The kind that screams affair in big, bold letters. Man, was I mad. I confronted her the moment she walked in. Who's Mark? I asked, holding up her phone. Her face went pale, then red, and then she started with the denials. You know, the it's not what it looks like kind of crap. But the proof was right there in my hands, clear as day. So, what did I do? I did something I never thought I would. I reached out to Linda, Mark's wife. You should have seen her face when I told her. It was like watching someone's world crumble in real time. But Linda, she's made of tougher stuff. Before I knew it, we were plotting revenge. We decided to go public with it. And what better place than their company's annual gala, right? The perfect stage for a grand exposure. We spent nights gathering every shred of evidence we could find. Emails, photos, the whole 9 yards. The night of the gala was something else. You could cut the tension with a knife. Linda and I, we were like undercover agents. Slipping those envelopes of truth into the hands of everyone who mattered. Bosses, colleagues, you name it. And then, boom, it was like setting off a firecracker in a room full of gasoline. Accusations flew. Tempers flared. Our plan worked better than we could have imagined. There they were, Mark and my now ex-fiancé, standing in the center of a storm of their own making, the looks on their faces priceless. Watching the chaos unfold, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. They got what they deserved, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long, twisted saga that would change more than just 4 lives. Ever seen a house of cards tumble down? That's how fast things went south for Mark and my ex-fiancé after the gala. The very next day, the company gave them the boot, fired for violating company policy. Guess some rules do matter after all. My ex was a mess, crying and pleading for forgiveness. It was a mistake, she kept saying. But you know what? Some mistakes you just can't undo. I told her it was over. End of story. I couldn't even look at her without seeing those texts flashing in my mind. Meanwhile, Linda turned into some kind of local hero. She filed for divorce, and let me tell you, she had the town's sympathy. People brought her casseroles, sent flowers. It was like she was the main character in some drama show, and everyone was tuning in for the latest episode. But then things took a darker turn. Rumors started flying around, painting Mark and my ex as the villains of the century. I mean, they weren't saints, but the stuff people said, it was brutal. Their reputations were mud, and there was no coming back from that. Just when I thought I could move on, I started getting these texts. Creepy anonymous threats. You'll pay for this, they said. You ruined their lives. At first I shrugged it off, just some troll having a laugh, right? But then it got serious. Threats turned into warnings. I'd find notes on my car, my mailbox. Someone was watching me, and they weren't happy. I reported it to the cops, but what could they do? Keep an eye out, they said. Great advice, right? I was looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes, jumping at shadows. The whole thing was turning into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up. Looking back, I thought I was playing the hero, serving up justice. But as those threats kept coming, I started to wonder. Was it all worth it? Exposing the affair? Tearing down their lives? Had I gone too far? The line between right and wrong was blurring, and I was smack in the middle, trying to figure out which side I was on. It's one thing to get creepy texts, but when you walk out to your car and find all 4 tires slashed, that's when you know things have gone off the deep end. That's exactly what happened to me one chilly Tuesday night. There I was, staring at my car, feeling like I was in one of those crime dramas. Only there were no detectives around to crack the case. The very next evening, things got even weirder. My neighbor, old Mrs. Jenkins, she calls me up, all frantic. Says she saw a figure skulking around my backyard. By the time I got out there, they were gone. Just the rustling of the trees and the distant bark of a dog. Creepy, right? So I did what any sane person would do. Linda and I went to the police. But let's be honest, without any solid proof, it was just our word against the shadow. The officers were sympathetic, but you could tell they thought we were just caught up in some post-affair drama. Frustrated and feeling a bit paranoid, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed security cameras all around my house. If someone was messing with me, I was going to catch them red-handed. And would you believe it, not even a week later, those cameras paid off. I was checking the footage one night, and there it was. The silhouette of a woman, lurking just beyond the reach of the porch light. It sent chills down my spine. Who was she? What did she want? That's when Linda called me, voice shaking. She'd been followed too, she said. Some car had been tailing her all the way home from work. Now this was getting serious. Whoever was behind this, they weren't just some prankster. They were organized, determined. The question kept gnawing at me. Who was this person? A friend of my ex, out for revenge? A crazed fan of Linda's newfound fame? Or someone else entirely? I lay awake at night, running through every possibility. But the answer seemed as elusive as the mysterious figure on my security footage. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside my window, it all made me jump. I was living on the edge, and not in a good way. The peace and quiet of my life before all this felt like a distant dream. Now, it was all about looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next strike would come. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, life throws a curveball. That's how I felt when a brick came crashing through my window one night, a note tied around it with words that'd make your skin crawl. You'll regret this, it read. And for the first time, I seriously considered the possibility that my ex-fiancé might be the one orchestrating this whole nightmare. Enough was enough, I had to face this head on. So I did something I swore I wouldn't. I went to confront her at her new place. Knocking on her door, my heart was racing, hands clenched into fists. When she opened the door, the look of shock on her face was almost convincing. I laid it all out. The slashed tires, the lurking figure, the brick through my window. But she just stood there, shaking her head, denying everything. And then she hit me with a bombshell. She claimed she was being harassed, too. Phone calls, strange cars following me, she said. I saw the fear in her eyes, and for a moment, I doubted if she was really behind all this. But before I could process that, my phone buzzed. It was Linda, and she was in a state of full-blown panic. Someone broke into my house, she cried out. I raced over there, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. What if it wasn't my ex? What if we were all targets in some twisted game? Arriving at Linda's, the scene was chaos. Her living room was a mess, glass shattered, belongings tossed around like a tornado had swept through. As we were sifting through the wreckage, trying to make sense of it, Linda stumbled upon something. A photo of Mark with some woman we'd never seen before. It was old, worn at the edges, but unmistakably Mark, arm around a mysterious stranger. That photo, it was like a piece in a puzzle we didn't even know we were putting together. Who was this woman? How did she fit into all this madness? Standing in the ruins of Linda's living room, holding that old photograph, I felt like we were on the verge of uncovering something big, something that could blow this whole mystery wide open. Questions raced through my mind. Was this unknown woman the key to everything? Was she the one behind the threats, the break-ins, the constant fear that hung over us like a dark cloud? And if so, why? What was her connection to Mark, to my ex, to any of this? It was clear we were dealing with more than just a scorned ex or a simple case of revenge. This was bigger, deeper, and we were right in the middle of it. The only thing I knew for sure was that we weren't going to let this go. We had to dig deeper, uncover the truth no matter how dark or twisted it might be. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The plot thickened like something out of a detective novel when we pieced together the identity of the mysterious woman in the photo. It was Sarah, Mark's ex-girlfriend. A quick dive into her past unearthed a slew of unsettling details. A history of stalking, a few run-ins with the law over violent outbursts. This was no ordinary ex. Linda's phone buzzed with a message that made our blood run cold. "You'll regret this," it read. The message was anonymous, but we had a pretty good idea who it was from. It was time to face our tormentor head-on. We found Sarah's address and made our way there, hearts pounding, minds racing. The place was a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. The kind of place that made you check your locks twice. Inside, we found a treasure trove of evidence. Photos of Linda, my ex, and me. Newspaper clippings about the gala scandal. Even a map with our houses marked on it. It was like walking into the lair of a stalker. Before we could process it all, the door swung open and in walked Sarah, eyes blazing with fury. The confrontation was explosive. Accusations flew, tempers flared. In the heat of the moment, Sarah let something slip. She'd been helping Mark cheat, feeding him information, covering for him. I couldn't believe it. It was one thing to suspect it, but hearing her confess? That was a whole different ballgame. Linda had the presence of mind to hit record on her phone. capturing every word of Sarah's confession. Just when we thought we'd gotten the upper hand, things took a turn for the worse. Sarah, realizing what she'd just admitted, flew into a rage. We left in a hurry, intent on getting this evidence to the police. But Sarah, she wasn't about to let us go that easily. She followed us, screaming threats and obscenities. The drive back was a blur of adrenaline and fear. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I could see Sarah's car. A menacing presence that seemed to echo the chaos she'd brought into our lives. It was clear now. She was the puppet master in this twisted game. Pulling the strings, watching us dance to her tune. As we sped towards the police station, I couldn't help but think about how far things had spiraled out of control. What started as a quest for revenge had turned into a nightmare. And now, with Sarah hot on our heels, it felt like we were racing against time itself. The streets were a blur as we navigated the twists and turns. All the while, Sarah's car looming in the background. Every turn we took, she was right there. It was like being in a high-speed chase straight out of a movie, only this was real life. And the stakes were higher than any Hollywood script. That chapter of my life, it was like being stuck in a whirlwind of anger, fear, and danger. Looking back, I realize how quickly things can escalate. How easily the hunter can become the hunted. And at that moment, with Sarah's car closing in on us, I understood that some stories, once started, have a way of writing themselves. Regardless of how desperately you want to turn the page. Picture this. A high-speed chase. Two cars tearing down the highway like something out of an action movie. Only this wasn't Hollywood, and I wasn't an action hero. It was Linda and me trying to outrun Sarah, Mark's crazed ex-girlfriend. Our car was pushed to its limits, weaving through traffic. Sarah's car mere inches behind us. The adrenaline was pumping, my heart racing. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, there she was. Relentless, like some kind of avenger out of a comic book. But this was real life, and the danger was palpable. We were dodging cars, blaring horns, and screeching tires. I kept thinking, this can't be happening. This only happens in the movies. Then it happened. In a split second that felt like an eternity, Sarah lost control. Her car swerved wildly, careening off the road. My heart stopped. There was a crash, a cloud of dust, and then silence. For a moment, time stood still. Despite everything, we couldn't just drive away. Human instinct kicked in. We stopped and rushed over to her car, which was now a twisted heap of metal. Sarah was there, slumped over the wheel, bloodied and barely conscious. The sight of her, so full of rage just moments ago, now so vulnerable. It was surreal. I called 911, my voice shaking as I tried to explain the situation. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, as Linda and I did our best to help Sarah. The animosity, the anger, all of it melted away in the face of human suffering. The police arrived, their lights painting the night in flashes of blue and red. They took over, carefully pulling Sarah out of the wreckage. As the ambulance doors closed, taking her to the hospital, I felt a weight lift and yet, a new one settle. It was over, but at what cost? The news of the crash spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about the high-speed chase, Sarah's crash, her role in the whole sordid affair. Our private drama was now public spectacle, fodder for the masses. My phone was blowing up with calls from friends, family, even reporters looking for the inside scoop. Standing there, watching the last of the emergency vehicles drive away, it hit me. This wasn't a victory. There was no triumph in seeing Sarah, a woman consumed by jealousy and anger, now lying in a hospital bed. It was a stark reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. How lives can be changed, or even ruined, in the blink of an eye. As I drove home that night, the roads empty and the night quiet, I reflected on everything that had happened. The chase, the crash, Sarah's fall, it was like a chapter out of a thriller novel. Only it was my life. Linda's life. And as the city lights blurred past, I couldn't help but wonder what the next chapter held, hoping for a return to normalcy, yet knowing that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. Imagine waking up one day to find that your personal life has become the town's latest gossip. That's what happened to my ex-fiancé and Mark. After the whole chase incident with Sarah, they were back in the spotlight, and not in a good way. Everywhere they went, whispers followed. It was like watching two pariahs navigating a world that no longer wanted them. Then out of the blue, Mark reached out to Linda. Talk about audacity, right? He was trying to patch things up, maybe find some solace in the wreckage he'd caused. But Linda, she's made of sterner stuff. She shut him down without a second thought. There's no going back, she told him. It was a door slamming shut once and for all. In the midst of all this, I received something unexpected. A letter from my ex-fiancée. Her words were like echoes from a past life, full of regret and apologies. I never meant for any of this to happen, she wrote. I wish I could take it all back. Reading her words, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, pity, a tinge of sadness. It was closure in a way, but not the kind you celebrate. Then came the call from a local news channel. They wanted to do an interview with Linda and me, a deep dive into the whole sordid affair. At first, I was hesitant. Dragging our story into the limelight felt like ripping off a bandage. But Linda convinced me. It's our chance to set the record straight, she said. So there we were, sitting across from the interviewer, cameras rolling, lights glaring. The questions came at us, probing, sometimes uncomfortable. How do you feel about what happened? Do you think justice was served? We answered as honestly as we could, reliving each moment, each decision. It was cathartic in a way, laying it all out there, raw and unfiltered. The interview aired and suddenly we were more than just names in a scandal. We were real people who'd been dragged through a nightmare. The public's reaction was mixed. Some sympathized, others judged. But one thing was clear. Our story had struck a chord. As I reflect on it all, it's surreal how life can take such unexpected turns. A series of decisions, a web of lies, and suddenly you're in the center of a storm that's bigger than you ever imagined. My ex-fiancé and Mark, in their quest for whatever it was they were seeking, lost everything. Their reputations, their peace, their place in a world they once knew. The interview ended, and Linda and I walked out into the cool evening air. It felt like stepping out of a time capsule, leaving behind a chapter that was finally, mercifully closed. But the echoes of what happened, they lingered. They reminded us of the fragility of trust, the weight of decisions, and the unpredictable path of life's journey. Driving home, the city lights blurred into streaks of color, a kaleidoscope of the past few months. It was over. But the lessons learned, the scars earned, they were a part of us now. And as the night enveloped the city, I realized that sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another. Have you ever watched a small flame turn into a wildfire? That's what happened when our story hit the internet. It went viral, spreading faster than we could have ever imagined. Suddenly, Linda and I were more than just the victims in a scandal. We were characters in a story that had captivated the public. Everyone had an opinion, some were on our side, others condemned us, and many just watched, eager for the next twist in the tale. As the story spread, Linda and I found ourselves in the eye of the storm. We read comments, watched reactions, and with each passing day, the reality of what we had set in motion became clearer. It wasn't just about exposing infidelity or seeking justice anymore. It was bigger, messier, a tangle of actions and consequences that had spiraled far beyond our control. One evening, as we sat in Linda's living room, the TV playing news clips about our story in the background, we talked. Really talked. We reflected on everything that had happened. The affair, the revenge, the chaos that followed. It was a heavy conversation, filled with what-ifs and if-onlys. We wondered if it was worth it, all the pain and turmoil we had caused. Then came the news about Sarah. The crash had left her with lifelong disabilities. Hearing that, it felt like a punch in the gut. Sure, she had caused us untold stress and fear, but this? This was a tragedy on a whole different level. It was a harsh reminder of how quickly things can escalate, how actions driven by anger and revenge can lead to irreversible consequences. As the reality of Sarah's condition sank in, a profound sense of sadness washed over me. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Our quest for justice, our fight against betrayal. None of it was meant to lead to this kind of suffering. The weight of our actions, the chain of events we had set in motion. It all came crashing down on us. The story's viral spread continued, but now with a new angle. The tragic outcome of a feud fueled by revenge and anger. People started to see the whole picture. The collateral damage of our war against infidelity. It wasn't just about cheaters getting their comeuppance anymore. It was a sobering lesson on the destructive power of revenge. Amidst the noise and the opinions, Linda and I found ourselves grappling with guilt and regret. We had wanted justice, to make Mark and my ex-fiancé pay for their betrayal. But the cost, the damage caused, it was more than we had ever intended. It was a bittersweet victory, tainted by the realization that nobody really won in this game. The final chapter of our story was a somber one. Everyone involved had lost something valuable. Relationships, reputations, and in Sarah's case, much more. It was a painful lesson learned. A stark reminder of how the quest for revenge can lead to consequences far greater than anticipated. As the public moved on to the next viral story, Linda and I were left to pick up the pieces to find a way to move forward from the chaos we had helped create. Driving home that night, the streets quiet and the sky dark, I pondered the twists and turns of the past few months. The affair, the revenge, the fallout. It was a story that had started with betrayal and ended with loss. A reminder that in the pursuit of justice, one must tread carefully. For the line between righting a wrong and causing more harm is thin, and once crossed, can lead to a path of irreversible. I'm Alex, and my world's about to flip. You see, just yesterday, I was the guy with the golden ticket, a beautiful fiancée, Sophia, a wedding in the pipeline, and what I thought was a future set in stone. Sounds like a dream, right? Wrong. Let's rewind a bit to where this tale spirals. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that promised nothing unusual until Sophia, with those deep eyes of hers, dropped a bombshell over dinner. Alex, what would you think about us having an open marriage? She asked, nonchalant as if discussing the weather. My fork froze mid-air, a piece of steak forgotten. Open what now? I managed, hoping I'd misheard. But no. Sophia was serious, dead serious. She went on about freedom, exploration, modern love, terms that felt alien, coming from her. I spent the night tossing and turning, not a wink of sleep. Betrayed. Confused. Words aren't enough to describe the turmoil inside me. The next day was a blur of seeking advice, talking to friends who looked at me with a mix of pity and disbelief. Man. You gotta think this through, they said, echoing the thunderous confusion in my head. Confrontation was inevitable. I needed answers, clarity, something to grasp onto in this whirlpool of madness. So, I faced Sophia, hoping for some misunderstanding, a joke taken too far. But as she defended her stance, talking about evolving relationships and personal growth, my heart sank. This wasn't the woman I proposed to under a sky lit with stars, promising forever in a moment of pure bliss. That flashback hit hard. A stark contrast to the present, murky with doubts and unmet expectations. The decision to call off the wedding wasn't easy. It came after days of heartache, of wrestling with what I wanted versus what was unfolding before me. Saying the words felt like admitting defeat, like tearing down a future I'd envisioned with such clarity and passion. Yet, in the face of a proposal that shook me to my core, what choice did I have? Are you sure this is what you want? I asked Sophia, a final plea for the woman I loved to reconsider. But her resolve was ironclad, her vision for our future fundamentally different from mine. It was a crossroads moment, and the path I chose led away from her, from us. Calling off the wedding wasn't just the end of a relationship, it felt like the end of an era. My perfect relationship, once the envy of friends and family, crumbled under the weight of an unexpected request. The dream wedding, the future together, gone in the blink of an eye. So here I am, recounting the surreal turn of events that led me to this juncture. It's a tale of love, betrayal, and the painful realization that sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that save us from losing ourselves. As for Sophia and me, our story could have been a fairy tale. Instead, it's a cautionary tale, reminding us that the heart wants what it wants, even if it means walking away from what once felt like a perfect match. The moment I hit post on the breakup announcement, my world spun into a frenzy. Picture this. Your entire love life dissolving into chaos for the world to see, and me, Sophia, right in the eye of that storm. The reactions were instant, a mix of shock, support, and, of course, the inevitable gossip. Can't believe it. Texts pinged non-stop on my phone, a digital echo of my heart's turmoil. But let me backtrack for a sec. After Alex called off the wedding, citing my so-called radical ideas about marriage, I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Alex, can we talk? I texted, hoping to mend what seemed like a temporary rift. His response? Affirm, there's nothing left to say. That hit hard, folks. Like a slap of reality across the face. Then came the gut punch. Alex, the man I once envisioned as my forever, was on a warpath. Word got around that he'd been digging into my past, my present, heck, probably even my future. Friends became informants, whispers turned into evidence, all aiming to tarnish my reputation. Sophia's been seeing other people, murmured through our circles, painting me as the villain in our breakup saga. But here's where the plot thickens. Alex, in his quest for revenge, didn't know I was 2 steps ahead. I caught wind of his little investigation and, let me tell you, the game was on. If he thought he could expose me, well, he had another thing coming. I launched my counterattack, a smear campaign to rival his. Alex? Controlling, possessive, I'd say, dropping hints here and there, painting a picture of a relationship suffocated by his insecurities. It was dirty, sure, but love and war, right? The evidence pile grew on both sides, a tug of war with our reputations on the line. Photos, messages, whispered secrets, all fair game in this twisted battle of he said, she said. The air was thick with betrayal, a constant reminder of the love that once was. Every move calculated, every word weighed for impact. We were no longer the couple envied by all. We were adversaries locked in a duel where the heart was the ultimate casualty. In this high-stakes game, friends took sides, lines were drawn, and the once blurry truth became a weapon sharpened by bitterness. The community watched, riveted and divided, as the saga unfolded, a modern-day tragedy fueled by vengeance and pride. And there I stood, amid the ruins of a relationship that promised forever, now just a battlefield of wounded hearts and tarnished reputations. The question lingered in the air, heavy with the stench of betrayal. How did love so pure turn into a war so vicious? As the story unfolds, remember, folks, every tale has 2 sides, and in the world of love turned sour, the truth is often the first casualty. Stay tuned, for this saga is far from over. The next chapter promises more twists, more turns, and a dive into the depths of revenge and redemption. Who emerges victorious? Well, that's a story for another day. The tide turned overnight. One day, I'm the villain in everyone's story, and the next, I'm the damsel in distress, garnering sympathy from every corner of our small world. It's bizarre, you know, watching public opinion shift like the wind. But hey, I'm Sophia, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's how to ride the storm. Just when I thought I'd played all my cards, along came Jordan. Now, imagine this. A shadowy figure slipping into my DMs, all cryptic-like, with a "got something that might interest you" message. Sounds like a plot twist straight out of a noir film, right? Well, it felt like one too. Meeting Jordan was like stepping into the unknown. I can help you win this, he said, his voice a mix of mystery and determination. You could say I was skeptical. Partner up with a stranger? But then, desperation makes for strange bedfellows, and I was nothing if not desperate. So, we shook on it, an alliance forged in the dim light of a dive bar, the kind of place where secrets are just another currency. Jordan had the goods on Sophia. Evidence of past manipulations, tales of deceit stretching back years, a veritable treasure trove of betrayal. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each revelation more pungent than the last. Did you know about her stint in Chicago? Jordan asked, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were photos, messages, a dossier on Sophia's life before me. I didn't, of course. She'd painted her past in broad, unspecific strokes, a masterpiece of omission. But here, in black and white, was the proof of her duplicity, a ledger of lies that left a bitter taste in my mouth. Working with Jordan was a study in the art of revenge. We were detectives, digging through the detritus of Sophia's past, unearthing skeletons she'd thought buried deep. Each piece of evidence was a bullet in the chamber, a means to an end I was still struggling to define. As our unlikely partnership deepened, so too did my understanding of the woman I'd once planned to marry. Sophia, with her easy smile and easier lies, had fooled us all. The evidence was damning, a litany of broken hearts and betrayed trusts that painted a picture of a woman skilled in the art of manipulation. Yet, as we plotted our next move, I couldn't shake a nagging doubt. Was this quest for vengeance truly worth its cost? Each revelation, each piece of hidden truth, felt like a blow to my own integrity. But there was no turning back. Jordan and I were in too deep, bound by our shared desire to expose the truth. The plan was simple. Lay bare Sophia's past for all to see, a public reckoning that would strip away her facade of innocence. It was a dangerous game, one that promised satisfaction but threatened destruction in its wake. And so, as the chapter closes on this uneasy alliance, one thing becomes clear. The path to vengeance is fraught with shadows, and those who walk it risk losing themselves in the darkness. But for me, Alex, the choice was made. There was no turning back, only forward, into the uncertain future that awaited. Just when I thought the drama couldn't get any thicker, life threw me a curveball named Jordan. Picture this. I'm sitting in a dimly lit cafe, nursing a coffee that's gone cold hours ago, and in walks this enigma, straight out of a noir film, claiming to be Sophia's estranged sibling. You could have knocked me over with a feather. Alex, I think we can help each other, Jordan says, sliding into the seat across from me, voice dripping with a vendetta that mirrored my own. I'm skeptical, sure, but desperate times, folks. Jordan lays it all out, their own axe to grind with Sophia, a history of manipulation and deceit stretching back further than I could have imagined. My jaw practically hits the floor. She's done this before, Jordan reveals, detailing Sophia's past like chapters from a book I never wanted to read. It's all there. The lies, the betrayals, a trail of broken hearts Sophia left in her wake. And here I was, thinking I was special. The plot thickens as we hatch a plan, something grand and public to finally put Sophia in her place. Let's expose her, once and for all, Jordan proposes, eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and something darker. I'm in, despite the voice in my head screaming caution. We're talking full-on digital warfare, leveraging social media, direct evidence, the works. It's risky, sure, but what have I got to lose? My reputation's already hanging by a thread, thanks to Sophia's little smear campaign. Meanwhile, Sophia's playing her own game, cozying up to some wealthy influencer, her next victim in a long line of conquests. It's sickening to watch, knowing what I know now. She's planning to make a big splash at the upcoming gala. Jordan informs me, their network of spies paying off. The gala. Perfect. A gathering of the city's elite, all eyes on Sophia. What better stage for our grand expose? The countdown begins, tension mounting as the event draws near. Jordan and I are like co-conspirators in a spy thriller, gathering evidence, plotting moves, and counter-moves. It's exhilarating, in a twisted sort of way, a far cry from the life I thought I'd be living. Are we really going to do this? I find myself asking Jordan one night, doubt creeping in amidst the adrenaline rush. Yes, they say, conviction in their voice. It's time everyone saw Sophia for who she truly is. And I want to believe, more than anything, that this will all be worth it in the end. That justice, whatever that looks like, will finally be served. As the gala approaches, it's all hands on deck. We're ready, our arsenal of truth primed and waiting. But there's this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, a question that keeps me awake at night. What if we're no better than Sophia, using secrets and lies as weapons in this war of egos? But there's no turning back now. The stage is set, the players in position. It's showtime, and one way or another, this twisted saga is coming to a head. Stay tuned, folks. The climax of this story promises fireworks, revelations, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of redemption for those of us caught in Sophia's web. The night of the gala was electric, the air thick with anticipation in the glittering eyes of the city's elite. There I was, Sophia, decked out in my finest, ready to charm the crowd. Little did I know, I was walking straight into a trap set by Alex and Jordan. The stage was set, the players all in position, and the script? About to be flipped in a way I never saw coming. As the evening progressed, I floated from group to group, laughter and light banter my constant companions, unaware of the storm brewing just out of sight. Then, amidst the clinking glasses and soft hum of orchestral music, it happened. The lights dimmed, and onto the screens that adorned the walls flashed images and messages so personal, so damning, I felt the ground give way beneath me. The room fell silent, every eye glued to the displays showing evidence of my so-called manipulations and infidelities. Alex and Jordan had played their hand, and oh, what a hand it was. I stood frozen, the color draining from my face as I tried to piece together a defense, any defense. This isn't what it looks like, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper against the tidal wave of murmurs and shocked gasps. But the evidence was irrefutable. Texts, emails, pictures, my life laid bare for all to judge. The influencer, the one I'd hoped would be my ticket to greater things, stood up, their denouncement of me ringing loud and clear. I want nothing to do with this. This deceit, they declared, their voice echoing off the walls, branding me the pariah I never thought I'd become. The fallout was immediate and merciless. Friends, allies, those I'd counted on in my corner, all recoiled as if I were toxic. The crowd's warm gazes turned cold, their backs turning on me one by one. I was alone, truly alone, in a sea of faces that once smiled upon me. The isolation was palpable, a thick cloak of shame and regret settling around my shoulders. As for Alex, I caught a glimpse of him through the throng, his expression not one of triumph but of profound sorrow. It struck me then, the weight of what we'd lost, the depth of the chasm between us. His victory was as hollow as the echo of my footsteps as I fled the gala, a pariah in a world I once ruled. The night air was cold against my tear-streaked face, the sounds of the gala a muffled reminder of the empire I'd built and lost. The realization hit me hard. I was the architect of my own downfall, my machinations and manipulations coming back to haunt me in the cruelest of ways. In the quiet that followed, I understood the true cost of my actions. Not just the loss of friends, status, or opportunities, but the loss of myself, the person I could have been. The person I should have been. The echoes of my choices would follow me, a specter of what was and what could never be again. And Alex, with his hollow victory, what did he gain? A Pyrrhic win, a battle won at the expense of his heart. We were both casualties of a war neither of us truly wanted, our lives intertwined in a saga of love, betrayal, and ultimately, loss. As I walked away from the lights, the laughter, and the life I knew, the emptiness inside me grew. It was a painful lesson, a chapter in my life I'd give anything to rewrite. But some stories, once penned, are set in stone, a reminder of the choices we make and the prices we pay. The gala, my reckoning, was over, but the journey, the road to redemption or ruin, was just beginning. The gala was a spectacle, the climax of our carefully orchestrated vendetta against me, but the fallout was cataclysmic, far beyond the confines of glittering gowns and whispered scandals. The aftermath was a tsunami, sweeping away the remnants of my dignity and leaving me stranded in the debris of public condemnation. Imagine that, me, Sophia, once the darling of every social circle, now the pariah, the cautionary tale whispered about in hushed, pitying tones. In the wake of the gala, I found myself grasping at straws, desperate for a lifeline. I reached out to Alex, my voice trembling as I left message after message. Alex, please, we need to talk. There's so much you don't understand. I pleaded into the void, each word a drop in the ocean of our shattered past. But silence was the only reply I received, a stark, unyielding wall that sealed my fate with cold finality. The spiral didn't stop there. News of my downfall spread like wildfire, a delicious scandal for the masses to feast upon. My social media was a battleground, each comment a dagger, each share a nail in the coffin of my former life. Financial ruin wasn't far behind. Sponsors withdrew, contracts evaporated, and my once thriving career became a wasteland of broken opportunities. And then, the ultimate betrayal. Jordan, the mysterious ally in my quest for vengeance against Alex, turned their sights on me. I was a pawn in their game, a means to an end that I was too blinded by revenge to see. It was never about helping you, Alex. It was about bringing Sophia down. Jordan's words echoed, a confession that unraveled the last threads of my trust in anyone. Amid the ruins, I was forced to confront the reality of my actions, the depth of my deceit, and the price of my ambition. The mirror held no lies. The architect of my demise stared back with hollow eyes, a reflection of the soul I'd bartered in the pursuit of revenge. Sophia's last stand was not a battle cry but a whisper, a feeble attempt to salvage the remnants of a life too far gone. My reputation was beyond repair, a shipwreck adrift in the sea of public opinion, with no harbor in sight. The realization was bitter, a pill too large to swallow, that my career, my social standing, everything I'd worked for, had crumbled to dust. Alex, for his part, sought solace in escape, leaving the city and its ghosts behind. The pursuit of a fresh start was his redemption song, a melody of hope amidst the cacophony of our mutual destruction. I need to find peace. Away from all this chaos, he confessed in a rare moment of vulnerability, his departure a silent testament to the cost of our war. As for me, the journey forward was a path through uncharted ruins. The lesson of revenge, a curriculum written in the scars of our battle, taught me the hollowness of such victories. In the silence of my isolation, I pondered the ruins of my life, a testament to the folly of vengeance. The fall was not just mine but ours, a shared descent into the abyss, where the echoes of our choices reverberated with the haunting melody of regret. The realization dawned, bleak and unforgiving, that revenge is a poison, a chalice from which we both drank deeply, only to find ourselves ensnared in its lethal grasp. In the end, the reflections on revenge were not just musings but epitaphs for what we had lost. For in seeking to destroy the other, we had destroyed ourselves, a tale of ruin written in the ashes of our once blazing fire. As the dust settles on the battlefield of my life, I find myself in a place I never imagined, the quiet corner of obscurity. The world I once knew, filled with glitz, glamour, and the constant buzz of social media, has faded into a distant memory. Here I am, Sophia, once the center of attention, now grappling with the stark reality of my actions and their irreversible consequences. In the wake of the gala, the fallout was swift and brutal. My attempts to reach out to Alex, to explain, to plead for some form of understanding, were met with a silence more cutting than any words could ever be. He refused to engage, severing the last thread of connection between us. As news of my downfall spread, my social and financial status crumbled beneath the weight of my own choices. Friends, allies, those I thought would stand by me, distanced themselves, leaving me in a self-made exile. And then, the final betrayal. Jordan, the sibling I had pushed away, the ally I thought I had in my corner, turned their back on me, revealing their own manipulations. The revelation shook me to my core, forcing me to confront the harsh truth of my entanglement in deceit and revenge. Alex, for his part, chose a different path. He left the city, the chaos, and the memories behind, seeking a fresh start and the chance to learn from his past mistakes. His departure marked the end of our shared story, leaving behind a legacy of pain, betrayal, and the hollowness of revenge. As for Jordan, their fate was a stark reminder that manipulations and lies eventually catch up to you. Their downfall was a silent echo of the chaos we had all contributed to, a bitter end to a game no one truly won. In this quiet solitude, I've had time to reflect on the choices I made, the paths I took, and the people I hurt along the way. The cost of vengeance, the price of my actions, weighs heavily on my soul. I realize now the cycle of revenge brings no true satisfaction, only more pain and regret. Alex, in his new life, finds some measure of peace, though the scars of our past remain. His journey towards forgiveness and moving forward stands in stark contrast to the path I find myself on. Yet, in his story, there lies a lesson in the power of letting go, of finding strength not in retaliation but in the capacity to forgive and rebuild. The community, too, has begun to heal from the drama that once enthralled it. Trust is slowly being rebuilt, and character, once overlooked in favor of sensationalism, is now valued. We've all learned, in our ways, the importance of integrity, the destructive nature of revenge, and the possibility of redemption, even when it seems all is lost. As this chapter of my life closes, I'm left with a profound sense of reflection. My story, once a cautionary tale of ambition and manipulation, has become a journey towards understanding and, hopefully, redemption. The legacy I leave behind is not one I'm proud of, but it's one I accept, with the hope that others might learn from my mistakes. In the end, the final message of this saga is clear. The true strength lies in the courage to face our darkest moments, to own up to our actions, and to strive for a better, more honest life. It's a message I hold close as I navigate this new chapter, one step at a time, towards a future where the past no longer defines me, but rather informs the choices I make moving